You are about to journey against the current of contemporary thought and beyond the troubled waters of daily news to the very source of our extraordinary culture. You are going upstream with Cashill and Edge.
You know, we were just talking off the air, Jack Cashill being
Hey,
one
Jack.
of the people talking, with,
Loy Edge, the other guy.
and you were telling me about your buddy Frank Sinatra. I was impressed. I didn't know you guys knew each other.
Oh, yeah. I go way back with Frank.
Yeah, back to Hoboken, 1912,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was just telling you how he changed from when he was younger to when he got older. When
Yeah.
he'd sing about women. You know, when he was young, Frank would be like, that gal of mine. And then when middle-aged Frank was, that chick, that dame. And then old Frank was kind of like, that's why that broad is a tramp. I think he's just some kind of bitterness or something.
You know, it's hard to say. You know, I listened to the Sinatra channel on Sirius. It's my really default channel. Mm-hmm. Although you get tired of the old Frank is good, and the middle Frank is good. The live Frank presenting in Las Vegas is a train wreck.
That gets very tiresome.
It does, because the audience feels compelled to laugh at his jokes, and they're awful.
Yeah.
Or his improvisations. So he'll be singing, "That's why the lady is a champ." Well, I'm sorry you destroyed the whole. It's a clever song that you just destroyed, right? You
That's
know?
right.
You took all the irony out of the song. The lady's
Yeah.
a tramp. That's because people.
Yeah, Frank was much more entertaining when he had Sammy and Dean to play off of.
Yeah, I mean that they at least could divert him, but I never understood why they would suck up to him the way they did, though. You know,
That was part of the shtick.
you think?
Well, that and mob connections. But
And fear. You know,
yeah,
that was part of it.
alleged mob connections.
Right. We're talking about something much more benign, though, this show. I'm talking about the Portlandization of America's cities, and Portland being the model. It's hard to believe now when we see what's happened to Portland. No, and which was kind of predictable. You know, I had written an article about 10 or so years ago saying that you know that your city has gone too far when you see a second street mime, right? Mm-hmm. But mimes were a benign barometer of what was happening. Now we know a city's gone too far when you see your own Antifa chapter, which was the logical progression today. We don't go benignly from mime to mime. We go from progressive echo group to full-blown Antifa chapter, you know, Occupy Kansas City, whatever.
And what's really confusing is you don't even know who's behind it these days.
Right.
How much of this is officially sanctioned?
Yeah.
Which is really bizarre when you get down to that. It's like, our city just made an official statement condemning police in general and giving the thumbs up to cultural Marxist, radical, violent
Yeah, I mean,
demonstrators.
but right now, Kansas City is not yet in the Portland phase. You know, I've sat in city planning meetings where they aspire,
Oh, yeah.
and that's their model. Right now, we're in the appease the yuppie phase, right? Mm-hmm. And keep the yuppies on board for when we move to that next phase. Mm-hmm. And their newest grand plan, I'm talking about Kansas City, but it could be any city. Every city in America.
Any
is now
city
the
that
same.
has declared itself a sanctuary city, basically.
Right.
If they've done that,
Right.
you know they're headed this way.
I mean, essentially every city with a Democratic mayor, what it comes down to. Every major city of size. And when I first moved to Kansas City some years ago, I was proud that, I like Kansas City as a distinctive, place. And now it's any other city. All cities, and I don't say this to dismiss Kansas City, because I'm sure if I went to Cincinnati or, Oakland, I mean, no, there's the bad class of cities, the Newarks, Oaklands, Camdens. But Kansas City is one of that middle range of cities that's on the decline because it's been woke to a certain degree. And right now we're at the appeasement bread and circus phase. We talk a little bit about bread and circuses. But the most, to me, striking example right now of a counterproductive, expensive way to appease the sort of the young, upwardly mobile professional types in your midst is a downtown ballpark.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things. You hit on a rich vein there. So we'll talk about the ballpark, but I think that we've seen a lot of other things that go to both of your points.
Yes.
One of them is the commoditization or whatever, commodification. Well, I don't know what the real word is, but making Kansas City like every other city.
Right.
There have been some great examples of that. All expensive, all foolish.
Right.
And then to this recent one of the ballpark. So continue, but I want to go on talk about Power and Light and a lot of the other things that can be in every other city. I don't know if you've
No, right, sure. I've been to other cities. I remember going to visiting
It's
Louisville
Power and
once.
Light
It's
district.
same. Louisville. I mean, as an example.
Yeah.
I go to Louisville, which stole, by the way, the future farmers of America away from us.
Yeah. Well, there are, but this is a racket.
Right.
Nobody knows that. Everybody's sold this thing. It's all about Kansas City. Yo, wouldn't it be great?
If we had a brand new airport, just like everyone else's airport. Right.
And these are all wag the dog things. The money's getting pushed in from somewhere else,
Right.
and they're like, boy, we sure need a new airport. Have you tried the door on this bathroom? Look, it's a senator can hardly even get in here. But
and then there's the fight. I mean, this is the template. There's then the fight over who gets what minority or female percentage. Right?
Exactly.
And then you go to the work site, and it's all white guys.
Right.
It's the minority percentage got taken up by the middlemen. They get their cut, then everything else is downstream, right? But the ballpark is because what got me started on this. I was reading this article and. The NPR station here locally, KCUR, about a guy from New York who's a ballpark aficionado and, author of ballpark. He likes ballparks, downtown ballparks.
Every one of you guys from New York think you're a ballpark aficionado.
That's right. And he talks about, there's something about walking across acres of asphalt. It's just deadening, He's talking about where Kansas City's ballpark now. Those who don't know, and anyone who's driven by I-70 knows where the ballpark is. I remember when I first came to town, seeing it there. It was, wow, it's great. Right off the highway, acres of parking, easily accessed from everywhere, right in the middle of the county whose citizens are paying for this ballpark, Jackson County. Also the site of, in the Book of Mormon, the second coming of Jesus, by the way, just FYI. And when I first came here, and the Royals were on the ascendancy then. This is in the late 70s. They were, winning pennants and World Series. And I was a baseball fan from way back. And I just thought, I drove from my home in Midtown Kansas City. It took me 15 minutes to get to the ballpark. It took me a minute to get through the gates. It took me 2 minutes to find the parking space. And then the 5-minute walk across acres of asphalt. I'll give them that, right? Among happy families with kids and tailgaters.
Right.
And everyone,
nobody doing a poopy.
No homeless encampments, No greater stress in walking from car to park than getting there on time, getting there for the Star-Spangled Banner, right?
No street urchins shaking you down for $1 to watch
no
your car.
No squeegee men, It's like, now, because as a kid, to go to a ballpark, I grew up in metropolitan New York, I lived in New Jersey. We had to go to Yankee Stadium, and that was an expedition. I mean, there has been rhino hunts undertaken with less anxiety than our trip to Yankee Stadium, because you had to go, the Pulaski Skyway, Lincoln Tunnel, uptown, and then if the weather got bad, you think you could make a 90-minute drive, and then have to turn around and go home, or if once you got to Yankee Stadium, you're parking on the streets of the Bronx or people who are, beckoning you to parking lots that you don't even know that are real parking lots. So getting to the ballpark in Kansas City, Royal Stadium now, the K, Coffin Stadium, was such a breeze. And the parks and it sits right next to Arrowhead Stadium, the site of this year's AFC Championship game, in which the Chiefs won, of course. And they still do the Tomahawk Chow. I like that one. The one un-PC thing in Kansas City,
Well, I thought they should stop that because it's just hurtful. I think they should go to pew, 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 pew.
I think that'd be more certainly more appropriate. And actually, it's a good segue into one of the problems with the downtown ballpark, right?
That's right.
We've been on in Kansas City, and we're not unique in this, a surge in homicides that we've never seen before. Post Minneapolis, really, that was the starting point, the time bomb that blew everything up. So the notion of this guy strolling to a downtown ball, he's thinking Wrigley Field, maybe, or Fenway's.
They're definitely a romanticized,
right,
unrealistic vision of what a stroll through most downtowns to go to the ballpark is like.
Especially Kansas City now. And to put a park in Kansas City now, I mean, it's one thing to have built a park a century ago where it could actually literally fit into the landscape without...
Or even 50 years ago,
right.
It would have worked. But, well...
Crime-wise,
60 years ago.
Yeah, the crime wouldn't have been an issue. But
but before everyone vacated, I mean, the timing couldn't be stupider.
Couldn't be stupider.
And then, which is funny because you look at the timing of the whole deal. You look back in the 70s when there was still a chance to have some vibrancy down there. And, of course, the trend was for offices to go to the suburbs and import a piece of downtown to the suburbs.
Right.
So you had beautiful rolling hills filled with lush grass, neatly manicured, with beautiful trees, and a glass box stuck in the middle
right.
with people trapped in it,
yeah.
looking out through tinted glass at some grass that no human has tread on for 15 years.
Right.
And then later, like last month, they started talking about, well, let's just take a piece of suburbia,
right,
and we'll plop it down over a highway, and we'll all have a place for our little Frenchie bulldogs to pee on. And it'll look just like a suburban rolling hill.
Yeah.
But it's actually a flap over a highway.
Right.
So they're always grabbing one piece and throwing it over here. Well, now they want to take that, what's turned out to be a convenient, safe suburban experience, and throw it back downtown.
Right, where most people in the metropolitan area fear to tread.
They don't go there anymore, for sure.
Now, what makes this all the more perplexing is that Kansas City has more freeway miles per capita than any metropolitan area in the world. And, because through my magazine work, I've sat in at meetings with city planners and all these people, and I would say that as a boast. I said, we've got more freeway miles. Why not take advantage of it? Why not make that our selling point? So that has been historically a selling point because it's so easy to get around here.
The city will not admit what it is.
Yeah.
It always has had this wonderful status as one of the premier hubs in the country.
Right.
It's a rail hub. It's an air hub. It's got the caves, the temperature-controlled storage.
Right.
So it's a highway hub beyond any other, as you just mentioned.
Right.
And it's even could be a river, a navigable water hub.
That's right.
Everything. It's a hub.
Right. And the fact that when the interstates were being conceived, Truman was president. When they were executed, who's from Missouri? Eisenhower was president. He's from Kansas.
Right.
So we were getting early highway miles here before anyone else, and we're right in the middle of the country. And
second largest train.
Right, hub in the country, right after Chicago.
Hub.
And they don't want to know that because they want to be just like everyone else. The ultimate exemplar of that is, of course, in their mind, Portland, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Portland, of course, they're beginning to say, well, maybe Portland went a little too far, No, Portland was the natural progression of where you're heading with this kind of stupid stuff,
Exactly.
So by the way, I wrote an article about the ballpark. I was so sort of perplexed by it all. Perplexed is too nice a word. Frustrated, pissed off, is the word. Because I'm a taxpayer, I got to pay for this. And because I won't go downtown to the ballpark. I can go park in a place where, first, people hate parking garages. People hate...
Especially in Kansas City.
In Kansas City. They'd rather pay for
a Quick Trip has 80 surface parking spaces. Why in the hell do I want to go someplace where I have to spend a lot of money and do this?
And get out at the end of the game.
Oh,
right?
it's terrible.
So right now, you can the way the exits are at the ballpark. There's so many of them. You can get out in 5 minutes if you're clever. If you're not, it takes a little longer, but not much longer.
I guarantee if they go downtown, there's going to be some towers of parking.
Right, and people hate them. In Kansas City, people would rather pay for sex or psychiatry than parking. To go into a structure, people just don't like it. I don't like it because you feel contained, claustrophobic, vulnerable to criminals who prey on people in enclosed parking structures. So anyhow, I'm writing the article, and I in the middle of writing it, I get a call from this old friend of mine. I mean, literally old. He's an octogenarian, and he's a Royal Lancer. It's like the boosters for the, and they do volunteer work for the Royals over the years historically. I say, hey, Gary, I said, what do you think of this downtown ballpark idea? Here's what he says. This is what an 80-year-old says. I think it stinks. Now, if he was a 60-year-old, he'd say, I think it sucks, but I like that. They're kind of a throwback. I think it stinks. He goes, I've talked to all the other ambassadors. They all think it stinks. I said, okay, who are they doing this for, right? Well, they're doing it for this class of urban, young, fit, self-involved, cool
people who demand bicycle lanes.
That's right. The same people, right? And in fact, the same people for whom the city is proposing, and they go together, a 7-mile-long bicycle lane. Do you know along which road they're doing this along?
Truman Road.
Truman Road.
Yeah, they're getting a backlash.
And in fact, they'll probably stop it. Every city has a Truman Road. Truman Road is where you put your junkyards, your auto collision shops, your small factories, your
furniture outlet,
furniture outlets.
Scratch and dent.
It's the least glamorous, least yuppified stretch of any city. Every city has one. Some cities have more than one.
The only really stylish people around there are the ones in the cemeteries that are
right.
buried.
They do have nice cemeteries.
They're very cool.
They don't have there's not a Starbucks on the 7-mile length of it, literally.
No.
They have diners, maybe, greasy spoons, which are great, but burrito shop or something, they have a shop that'll sell,
something that recent immigrants haven't learned to be afraid to be there yet.
Yeah, right.
They don't realize that's a death wish.
Right. And Hispanic immigrants, to their credit, tend to be entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Which may mean like setting up a temporary shop where you sell Chiefs merchandise or watermelons in the summer and, pumpkins in the fall or whatever. Yeah. And that's what Truman Road is. A yuppie has never even driven on Truman Road. If they did, they'd be horrified. They'd turn around and go home. In fact, it reminds me of when I worked in advertising, I was asked to speak at to a special ed class in Northeast High School. And Northeast is down there in the Truman Road area in Northeast part
Gladstone or something?
No, it's
not Gladstone. What's that? I know what you're talking about.
It's in that old industrial part of town, right? Yeah. And so I got tied up, and I asked one of my subordinates if she could do it. And she was really thrilled. She said, what school? I said, it's Northeast, Oh, yeah, sure, I can do that, right? So we, comes crunch time where she's ready to go. And she goes, how do I get there again exactly? I said, well, you go downtown, you turn right on Truman Road. She goes, what? She said, I thought you said Northeast. I said, I did say Northeast. She goes, I thought you meant Northeast Shawnee Mission. Right.
There isn't one.
No, this is nice suburban Northeast Shawnee. Did you go to Northeast Shawnee Mission?
I went to East.
Oh, you went to East.
There is no Northeast Shawnee Mission.
There is no. Oh, that was it. It was East High School.
There's Northeast.
Yeah, right.
There is a Northwest.
Right. This is East High School, not Northeast. That's what confused her. I don't know.
Oh, East High School. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know my suburban schools as well as I should. East High School. And she refused to go. So I had to go. I had to in the middle of a meeting or whatever, but I couldn't deny an opportunity to talk to a bunch of kids in a slow, what do they call it? Slow learning class, special ed class. The kids were great though, by the way. They were so into it. They understood advertising. They didn't understand much else in this world, but they understood advertising. Two of them got into a fist fight in the middle of the class, but they were trying to answer a question. They were so eager to participate because this is a subject they knew. And even they would have known that there was no reason to put a ballpark in downtown Kansas City,
Right.
or a bicycle lane on Truman Road.
Yeah.
But we're catering to this class.
Yeah, those people are annoying. When they come in their bicycle shorts in the cafe and they've got the sweat stains all over their groin, I don't like that.
There are only about 2 or 3 males in North America who look good in bicycle shorts, and none of them lives in Kansas City.
No, they don't.
In my own case, oddly, I didn't learn to ride a bicycle until I was about 30.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately I became a jerk and a fascist. It's just amazing how quickly that happens. It's like, all of a sudden you own the road, and
You started riding in the middle of the road, going up hills.
Hey,
They'll
right?
just have to wait.
And I, as a late learner, by the way, and it's very embarrassing to learn how to ride a bicycle at 30.
Yeah.
You really can't have someone pushing you down the street going, "Attaboy, Jack."
Right.
It doesn't work. So I got a moped, and I went off privately on a moped. It was self-propelled, and it took me an hour. Then I put the moped down, got on a bicycle, and I said, how did I let this defeat me for all these years? I just got on a bicycle and drove away. But I never learned to ride without no hands, right? But I did learn
I'll teach you.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I did learn to ride with just my left hand.
Yeah.
That way I could have my right hand free to throw everyone the finger, right? 'Cause
Right.
that's part of being an urban bicycler is about.
And I've found that cigar smoking's a lot easier when you do it that way.
Well, my great trick is that I can floss my teeth while I drive. And that's, if you're eating beef jerky on the road, you got to be able to floss your teeth. But that's a special trick. I'll do a special show. We'll do a special show on special tricks that we've masterminded over time. But
we're talking about downtowns, and Kansas City has got one unique deal in this whole dynamic. When we lost our downtown, and it dwindled down to just about no activity
and that
at
happens
one point.
in most American cities.
But when we did it with reckless abandon because we had a de facto downtown,
Right.
the Plaza.
The Plaza.
And it had all the trappings that we needed of a downtown.
It's exactly right.
It felt like it had a sense of place. Sense of place is an interesting thing. That's why they're pulling all the hipsters and all that downtown. It's not real. There's not a real connection in these new downtowns.
Right.
It's not a multi-generational Italian sandwich shop. It's not a building that's been owned by the so-and-so and this guy grew up here and the neighbors know each other and that's
Right.
the shoe guy. It's all new stuff,
Yeah.
but it's in old buildings retrofitted.
Right.
And that's for a sense of place.
Right.
Because people in the burbs, and this gets to you, I mean, where I live, I'm the oldest thing in the whole neighborhood.
The relic.
When I walk down the street or look around a shopping center, sometimes for an entire day, I'm the oldest relic around.
Yeah.
Well, that gets a little old.
Right.
And that's no sense of place.
Right.
So these people are hungering for something like this. There are, Disney's a master at creating a sense of place. It's all fake.
Right.
But it feels real and it feels like you're connected to something genuine and historical and authentic.
You're not your parents.
That's right.
You're not the suburbanite. You're the hip young breakaway renegade.
Edgy renegade,
Right.
not and
Just like every other
Exactly.
breakaway renegade.
yeah, it's just
Thinking
like the
that-
Art Institute kids all used to wear black. It's like, oh, you got your outfit, you got your costume, your breakaway edgy costume, you're all black. But yeah, so they're all going down there, and the Power and Light District is a great example of that.
Yeah.
It's a fake. Did we have a shortage of entertainment districts?
No, we had excess of them.
An excess
Of
of
organic ones.
And I was down in Westport for all those years,
Right.
which was an organic. And when an area is built organically, the thing is it has real roots,
Right.
and people have tempered those businesses after decade, sometimes century after century, and so there is a permanence to it, and there's a true authenticism to it.
Right.
Well, when a city goes into business competing with that tax base where people have their livelihoods and their families' livelihoods all tied into these areas where they've taken risk, personal risk, they've risked sometimes everything
Right.
to run an operation, to build a business, and then the city, wherever it is, hook up with this cadre, the same companies, the same influences, the same businesses, to take a giant real estate conglomerate and a giant bank and a city that's handing out money, and to go, we'll put an entertainment center that looks that's going to help give a shot in the arm to your ailing downtown. All you got to do is rob all the money and business from your tax base,
Right.
and then pay $12 million, or what is it? $1.2 million a month the taxpayers are still doling out
Right.
just to keep
To subsidize this.
to subsidize the
entertainment
Power
district.
and Light District.
Right.
So you're taking all the tax money and all the customers, the customer base, you're pulling away from your Westport areas
Right.
to put them into this new place that's all tax abated
Yeah.
and that you're paying for. That makes no sense if you have any interest in ethics or entrepreneurialism
Or cities. I mean, I was
look
telling you about this.
look what the tenants are.
Yeah.
They're all cookie
National
cutter.
chains that
Yeah.
are exactly the same, that aren't even tailored to your local needs.
And they're brought in on sweetheart deals where they can get in and get out,
Right.
and then the real estate company holds on to all the assets, but the taxpayers are on the hook to keep everything going.
Yeah, I mean, about 10 years ago, I spent a weekend in Louisville. As a side note, when I was checking in, right, and behind me was Dominic Chinese, junior soprano, right, into my hotel. That was the highlight of the weekend. Everything else was, I felt like I was, in Groundhog Day. I felt like I was back in Kansas City.
Yeah.
They had built an entertainment downtown district that was exactly store for store, restaurant for restaurant, the same as ours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fake as ours, So that what happened is that the city that used to have, I mean, back in the way day, had an extremely distinctive aura here. People sang songs about it, right? Going to Kansas City,
It was the Paris of the West.
actually the Las Vegas of the West, probably.
It was, yeah. Pendergast must have been a great time.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's, all jazz and crime and prostitution and gambling and great music to keep all the people entertained. And
Jazz is background music and blues are background music for all those other pursuits.
That's right. And the music, though, was, again, organic. It grew up here locally from the roots from, people like, Charlie Parker, who'd practice 10 hours a day, hang outside these bars, and not now. I mean, who knows? The music's all piped in and imported just like it is every place
By
else.
the way, you just mentioned Charlie Parker, and nobody talks about this, about Kansas City. People say, oh, well, the Kansas City sound, the Kansas City blues shouters, the Kansas City swing. But this was the city that bebop originated in.
Right.
And everybody thought for so many years it was New York. I was talking to Chuck Haddix one day, the
Right.
KCUR, the Mars Sound Archives, and they got a hold of a recording that predated any of that New York stuff that was Parker and McShann or somebody here playing bebop.
Well, partly because Parker moved from here to New York City, although he's buried here now, on Truman Road, where the bicycle lane.
I know. But anyway, just as a sideline, this is the city where bebop originated.
Good. And yet, and now, and it's hard to, what they, like I say, I was at many of these meetings, and I always contest, and I always kind of made fun of them to the degree that I could without alienating advertisers. If you're in the magazine business, you got to be careful about it. But they were catering to it, and they called it, and this phrase just drove me freaking crazy, probably would you too, the creative class.
The creative class.
Right.
I knew that was coming.
They all wanted to recruit the creative class.
That's right.
And my argument then, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is you create recruit one creative too many, and you get Portland. You get Antifa. You get Occupy Wall Street. You get Black Lives Matter. Because when you cluster these people, it seems that the only way they could distinguish themselves is to be more progressive, more woke than the next guy. They cannot go back. They can't distinguish themselves by...
But they're all funded by outside
just like the
cabals.
city itself. I mean, it's being funded, it's being subsidized, it's, but they'll sense that opportunity.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I was, every city, and you saw that the radical version of the identical city syndrome and the George Floyd BS, right?
Yep.
My office is in Westport, which is the old countercultural part, the natural organic part that's semi-falling apart because it's now competing with the glossy subsidized downtown. But in my office on the window, I was in my office that Sunday particularly was the big day of the protest that weekend. And I see these cars pulling in one after another. There's a lot of parking, on Sunday. And out-of-state license plates, young guys with big backpacks, filled with stuff, heavy backpacks.
Professionals.
Yeah. And it's all part, oddly, it's almost a hyperbolization of the same phenomenon we're talking about. That is the replication of one city after another, so they're all the same, First thing you get a downtown ballpark, next thing you get a riot,
Well, it's a coordinated de facto secession.
Right.
And people, up until recently, have looked at me like I was crazy when I said that. But now they're kind of connecting those dots, going, well, that kind of explains some of these things.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing is the chaos creators on the international level have instigated this slow march, this long march of secession, and not in this traditional sense of boundary lines like, the Civil War and all that, but culturally, because they're using nullification on Sanctuary City and because they're bringing in the franchise, the Antifa, check,
right.
Black Lives Matter, check, who are we missing? Bring them in here. And how this stuff just happens simultaneously, right, in all the different markets, and they send out signals in the media, like this recent deal.
Dog whistles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The recent deal, what was the latest thing where, there's going to be rioting, oh boy.
Right.
There was a police issue in
the
Memphis.
The Memphis
right.
issue, right. And, what's curious about the Memphis issue is that this was all put into place before they realized the cops were all black.
I saw that and I thought, uh-oh. Did they do this again? Because Morning Joe and Mika were all on the Zimmerman thing before they figured out
he was Hispanic.
He was Hispanic, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think I told you that story about meeting with him and his parents, and saying, if they had stuck to calling you Jorge instead of George after your uncle, no one would have ever heard of you.
But it's funny that they get ahead of these stories and then they're like, oh, man.
You can imagine the disappointment in newsrooms all across the country. And yet there was so much momentum behind it that they had to go through with it anyhow. And, I remember I was watching news with my wife. I said, there's not going to be riots all over the country. This is too false. You're asking too much of your audience. You're mind warping them too much.
And they wanted to drum it up.
Yeah, they did.
They kept kind of pre-announcing, there's going to be all kinds of, and then I guess everybody's like, this is a practice game, right? I mean, we don't have to go to this, right?
It's like an exhibition game. Right?
Yeah, it's because there's no white people to, come on. It's
like, and CNN ran all day with oppression porn. It's just like, CNN all day long. I was on Twitter all that day, whatever, that was a Friday of some week or another. And when they were running it and when they were ginning everything up, I was on Twitter on my side, my part. I didn't even know what was going on. Our video that day was the Paul Pelosi video, right? Which was much more interesting. And, the thing is too, and then when they showed the video of this guy is it Tyree Nichols? Is that his name?
I don't know.
I think I should know that. We're showing our ignorance here because we're not exposed to it as much. What am I supposed to say? Yeah, that's bad, right?
That's it. It's not.
It's local.
It's not.
It's a result of having forced out all the good police officers and hiring affirmative action African American officers to appease the people who are demanding this, right?
Yeah.
And but you can't even get into those
The
arguments.
defund the police people
Right.
want you to wring your hands and clutch your pearls. It's like, you brought all this on. What can I do?
Yeah. Why am I guilty of this? Why is this white supremacy? And then they tried.
Yeah,
They can't not sell the white supremacy trick. You know?
And it's almost like they had the speech written and they had to go ahead and deliver
right. That's
it.
exactly
It's
right.
supremacy. This is, and then what's his name? Poverty pimp guy.
Benjamin Crump.
What?
Al Sharpton.
Al Sharpton had. I kept thinking, is he just turning around on the plane?
Right.
He was going to deliver the racism speech, and they're like, "Hey, I got bad news."
Well, and this whole paradigm depends on having in place the new downtown occupant audience, the lemming audience.
Yes.
And in a city with like real people who live there and guys who painted houses and were cops and bartenders, they wouldn't get away with this. But these people are all programmed to think alike at the beginning, the creative class, and they're all protest to keep their mouths shut or join in. They know they do not have a voice of opposition that could be meaningful. And this goes all the way up, unfortunately, to the corporate level.
That's true.
When I first came to town, corporate people had minds of their own. Mm-hmm. And they were often at odds with each other. They were often doing things I didn't think were right, but they were not collectivized into a mass formation psychosis like they are today. Today, when something like this happens to Tyree Nichols in Memphis, they all know how to think and what to say.
That's right. It's in the HR manual.
Yeah.
They all look like architects now. They've all got the finely ground square glasses.
Right.
They've got the little gel in the hair.
Yeah.
They've got the tricky collar. There's something about it that's kind of different.
Right.
And the suit with the skinny pants and, and they got bicycles and stuff. I mean, yeah. And they all look like the same guy.
Right. And then on weekends, what they do is they all go out into these bicycle clusters,
You can hear them yelling at 6 in the morning.
Right.
And
they're so...
The latte there's great. Too dark for me.
That's exactly right. And the show, I mean, it's like, and back in the old days, like in circa Wild One days, Hell's Angel days, this poor town would be overrun by the movie with the Wild One is a classic where Marlon Brando comes in and she says to them, what are you rebelling against? He says, what do you got?
What do you got?
Now it's, what are you conforming to? What do you got? Because you'll be at I'll be at an outdoor like diner or something or like a dining area, and then I'll see this swarm of bicyclists coming. Actually, flock is a better word because they're flock like it's sheep, and they come in and they're just like you're saying, they're noisy. They're all wearing their bicycle shorts, and you're just trying to turn your head so you're just not grossed out. And they're talking a lot about nothing, and lattes, and they're seeking these out, and when they get in a cluster, they're particularly obnoxious, right?
Oh yeah.
I was a few years ago. I was staying with a family in the south of France, because it sounds a little more elite than it is, but in the Cannes area, and I was driving with my host down a road, and we ran into this cluster of bicyclists who were they're all, it's an international phenomenon. They're hogging the road. They're young, hip. They're the creative class. You're not. And my host yells at him, "Fascist!" And you don't even have to be French to understand what he's yelling, right? Because what happens is when they get together, individually they may be okay and tolerable. Together they're fascist, right?
Yeah.
There's a rolling band of fascists, right? I mean, with proper incentive, you could envision them wanting to conquer Poland. They're that bad. And they're universal. It's a universal phenomenon. I had an experience in Ireland some years ago where we were staying in Galway. I don't know if you've been to Ireland at all.
No.
Well, the roads, once you get outside the metros, they're barely wide enough for a donkey cart. They're just really narrow, craggy roads with rocks on the side and walls. And so we were driving to the Cliffs of Moher, which should have been no more than an hour drive from Galway, which is a spectacular place, and it's worth the drive typically. But unwittingly, we stumbled into a bicycle rally, an improvised bicycle rally. It wasn't like one that they advertised. It was just that we had to pass roughly 30 clusters of bicyclers in about a 20-mile stretch on roads that were barely wide enough for two cars to pass each other, at slow speeds. And by the time we got to the Cliffs of Moher, I needed a beer, and my wife needed counseling. It was a horrifying experience. No, Jack, no.
Well, it sounds like a typical drive downtown here.
Right.
You're looking around you got all the bicycles, you got all the bums,
Yeah.
you got all the construction, you got all the one-way streets going this way that used to be that way, and all the no parking, detour things like this, and crazy people running across the street, and trucks where you can't see the signs. It wears you out.
Yeah.
I mean, just driving around down there. Think how much worse it's going to be when they get another 10,000 trendies down there with bicycles.
And the ballpark for them to, I suppose they could take their bikes to the ballpark, although they'll probably be stolen while they're inside.
I hope so.
But then maybe they have their Baby Huey moments, where they have their,
what are they going to do?
Well, we used to say.
Have a temper tantrum?
No, I mean, historically, there is a moment that when one would say you were mugged by reality.
Right.
That's how many liberals become conservatives.
Yeah, but I just wonder what these people are going to do about it.
I think they'll have to be mugged more than once.
Yeah.
I think they have to be mugged twice. Because...
that'll elicit a strong letter.
Yeah. I remember watching...
To the Independent or something.
The riots, you've probably seen this video clip, where... I believe we're in New York City, and these guys are in a condo. They're probably about 3 stories above the ground with big glass windows, and the windows open, and they're yelling down, "Come on, we're all with you. We're on your side." This is the George Floyd BLM, and then a rock comes through the window.
and they
we're with you.
We're with you. We're with you.
This is the creative class.
That's right.
These are the people we brought into our downtowns.
That's right.
Not just in Kansas City, but in every downtown.
That was them having their Baby Huey moment.
But I bet it would have taken a couple bricks to go through a couple windows before they really came
I love that.
around.
We're with you. We're with you.
Right. And then, of course, in Kansas City, they're having their ultimate triumph. And sometimes they're
World soccer.
Yeah, oh gosh, forget. And not to mention the NFL draft now. That's another big deal. But the light rail. Right?
Oh, yes, light rail.
Which is the ultimate symbol of creative class dominance when that happens.
And it's free.
And yet, for a moment in 2020, and before it had really gotten underway in extending our light rail 5 miles south, I thought, maybe they'll see with the COVID, they're freaking out by COVID. They're the most people, they are freaked out by COVID.
No, yeah, they're told to.
That getting on public transportation might not be such a great idea.
Yeah.
The nice thing about cars is you're the only one in the car. I mean, I commuted to high school in New York City. I had enough of that. That's crazy stuff. But to get on, in New York City was like, it was total Zombieville during COVID, still kind of is. But maybe for a moment, they'll think that maybe riding elevators down condos and getting on vehicles filled with strangers they'll have a moment, will say, this isn't a great idea. Well, if they did, no one heard them because the planners were gung-ho. They're going full street ahead, and they are now, and pretty soon we'll be able to take we'll be able to take a light rail car along a street that buses used to travel totally freely and without issue. But now it'll be more complicated because light rail's screwing up the traffic, et cetera. And
it makes it really hard sometimes to drive down there.
It is. Oh, totally.
And scary.
And so fewer people want to go down there because they got to negotiate these stupid tracks.
Yeah, it's a downward spiral. They ripped up all the tracks of the streetcars.
Yeah.
They ripped up all the electric bus tracks. They've destroyed the bus routes. A lot of them.
And then since the yuppies were getting their light rail free, the city had to make all public transportation free.
Right, because that's only fair.
Which meant that if you were a roving gang from the east side, they can all just hop on a bus and come to an entertainment district and rip it up and mess it up and F it up and call it a day, go home. And it's free, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You would think, I don't know what it's going to take for the creative class and the people who cater to them, the politicians who do, to come to their senses. Do you think it's possible?
No, I think that a catastrophic event. That's what it takes.
See, I thought COVID might do it, but it didn't.
That was just training wheels.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's got to involve one of your favorite words, an existential threat.
Right.
Your refrigerator may not work for months.
Right.
You have no power.
Right.
You guys are going to be cannibalizing each other. The dog, the Labradoodle goes first. You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
they're good over
some really scary
rice,
shit has
apparently.
to happen
Yeah.
before these people will realize that, before it'll shake them out of their cargo cult mentality.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens. Hope it doesn't happen in the very near future in any case. But by the way, we are broadcasting here from, if broadcasting is probably not the right word, but whatever we're casting. Narrowcasting. From Real Media Studios in Overland Park, Kansas, full service. Call these guys if you want to do your own podcast. A lesser, inferior product, of course, than what we're producing today, but nonetheless, it's worth the effort. Or, you know, you're doing videos or audio or whatever you want to do. They do everything here. So, and we really appreciate it because they're excellent hosts. And
They got sound stages.
not only that, but they are tolerant of our point of view, which is not necessarily the norm in the media world, you know. So if you are, I mean it sincerely now, if you are looking to produce some sort of video, audio product that you want to make sure that the people who are producing it are sympathetic to your ideas, this is the place to come.
Yeah.
Real
They're
Media.
great. They're great folks.
Yeah. So, hey, thank you, Carly, for helping us out today. And Loy, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jack. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.